SubhanAllah, tonight the topic of hypocrisy is one of the scariest topics that we can speak of. Specifically for an imam or for a public speaker. It is one of the most frightening topics in the world, to be quite frank with you. I fear to speak about it, to be honest with you. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, rahimahullah ta'ala, when he spoke in his farewell khutbah, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was speaking to a group of over 50,000 people. And he broke into tears and he says, you know, I'm giving you this advice. وَمَا أَعْلَمُ عَنْدَ أَحْدٍ مِنَ الذُّنُوبِ مِمَّا أَعْلَمُ عِنْدِي. I'm giving you this advice and I don't know of anyone who has more sins than I have. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, rahimahullah, speaking to 50,000 people in Asham, probably concealed in that 50,000 people, the people that might have plotted to assassinate him and so on and so forth. So it's a very scary topic, and the more that we delve into it, the more that we look at the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, we see this huge fear. And I really want to address this topic from a totally different perspective. Hypocrisy is one of those topics that you can address from 100 different perspectives, and it will benefit us each and every single time, because it is the most, subhanAllah, it is the thing that the Sahaba feared so much that Ibn Abi Mulayka, he says, I met 120 companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. كلهم يتهم نفسه بالنفاق. Each and every single one of the companions that I met was accusing himself of nifaq, of hypocrisy. And subhanAllah, the scholars say, you know, he didn't just meet a few of the younger Sahaba or some of the unknown Sahaba. He met Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. He met the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab. He met Uthman. He met Ali. He met Abu Hurairah. He met some of the giants of the companions, and he was saying that each and every single one of them was sure that he was a hypocrite. He was so positive that he was a hypocrite. And so to just start this off from the very beginning, if you're here and you think to yourself, you know, I hope that brother over there, you're thinking to yourself, this doesn't apply to me because alhamdulillah, I'm not a hypocrite. But I hope that guy that's sitting over there, I hope he's listening very close, because I know he's a munafiq. You need to be worried about yourself right now. And if you're not worried about yourself, then you need to be even more worried about yourself. Because the greatest sign of a hypocrite, as Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu said, is the one who feels safe from hypocrisy. The one who has decided that I am not a hypocrite and I have nothing to worry about is the greatest hypocrite. Aisha radiallahu anha, she was asked, Man at-taqi? Who is the one who is at-taqi, the one who's really pious? She said, the one who thinks he's a hypocrite. And then she was asked right after that, and who is the hypocrite then? She said, the one who thinks he's taqi, the one who thinks he's pious. Once you come to that conclusion, in essence, hypocrisy goes beyond riyah, it goes beyond showing off, it goes beyond arrogance. Hypocrisy is a whole nother level. Hypocrisy is when you have decided to wear two faces. Whenever you have a face with Allah, a face with the people, a face with your wife, a face with your kids, a face with your parents, a face with people from this group, a face with people from that group. It represents a discrepancy. And the reason why it's so scary, and subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every time He mentions hypocrisy in the Quran, He mentions al-kadhib. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah says, every time hypocrisy is mentioned in the Quran, right after it, there is a mention of lying, the quality of lying. Right? You look in Surah Al-Baqarah, the first description of the hypocrites, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ. And they will have a painful punishment for the lying that they used to commit because of their lying. Because let's face it, that's exactly what two-facedness is. It's one thing to lie with your words. It's another thing to lie with your actions and to actually be living a lie. And you know what makes the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam so amazing and so great? You know what happens whenever you read the life of a great, you know, I'm not talking about the scholars of Islam. Let's talk about the influential figures of history. You read about them and they're recognized as great. History still treats them as great, even though they had some demons in the closet that came out. Right? So I mean, and it's not, history still recognizes them as great. So for example, Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King did amazing things. He was great for his leadership, but he had affairs. Right? You read about the life of someone like Napoleon, or you read the life of different people, and subhanAllah, you would find that yes, this person was great in one aspect of their life. You know, they have all these kings, you just go through the European kings. You go through the founders of this country when we start reading about George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and those types of things. Yes, they were great in some regards. And that's what history recognizes them for. But they also had some very serious demons in the closet. And Rasulullah ﷺ did not have those demons. And that's what makes the Prophet ﷺ the greatest of the greatest. The greatest creation, the greatest human being and leader to ever walk the face of the earth. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. When he stands up, and subhanAllah, you can be watching, Imam Siraj one time, he said something beautiful. He said, if you ever watch one of those, and I'm not encouraging anyone to do it, I personally don't do it. I think it's a waste of time. I'm saying the Academy Awards or the Oscars or things of that sort. Usually, when the awards are being handed out, you can almost see a look on the face of the family like he doesn't deserve that. She doesn't deserve that. The family's sitting there thinking to themselves like, yeah, okay, whatever. We know who you really are. We know who you really are. And one of the greatest ways to lose your children, dear brothers and sisters, is hypocrisy. You wonder why your children flee from Islam. And Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah said, nothing causes a person to leave the faith of his parents except for hypocrisy. Nothing like hypocrisy. They see a discrepancy in your actions and what you're saying. Right? You're conveniently strict on some issues. You're conveniently strict on a dress code whenever you go to the masjid, but then, mashallah, at the Eid party, it's all off limit. Everything comes off. Literally, everything comes off. The shalwar qamis and all. They see discrepancies. You say you should not date, you shouldn't do these types of things, but then they see you getting very close to khalto and auntie. There's a discrepancy. That you say that you need to be this, you need to be that, you shouldn't be egotistical, you should be humble, you should be respectful to your parents. Then they see you as an egomaniac. So what they do is they take your hypocrisy and it simply manifests itself in a different form. So they'll be hypocritical with you. When they're home, they'll be the mashallah kid. They'll read Quran. Whenever it comes time for salah, they'll be good little children and they'll put on their topis and they'll roll up their pants and they'll come and they'll put out their sajjad and they'll pray right next to you and they'll act like the perfect little kids. And then as soon as they're not in your sight anymore, it's a totally different human being. Totally different human being. Why? They inherited hypocrisy. They inherited hypocrisy. So we have to be very careful, especially as parents and things of that sort. But look at the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he comes out and he says, "Khayrukum khayrukum li ahli," the best amongst you is he who is best to his family. The wives of the Prophet ﷺ say, and you are the best of them. And even after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, Salama radiallahu ta'ala anha, when she would hear this hadith, the best amongst you is he who is best to his wife, she would say, Sadaqta ya Rasulullah. You were truthful, O Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The demons didn't come out. In fact, we found out we have more reason to love the Prophet ﷺ when we read about his family life. Isn't it so? The moments that really draw you close to the Prophet ﷺ, aren't they really those moments where Aisha radiallahu anha is describing how he was in the home sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his calmness, his kindness sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the way that he treated her, the way whenever he wanted to pray qiyamul layl. Isn't that what really draws us close to him sallallahu alaihi wasallam? That's what makes us fall in love with him. When we see how transparent he was. And the greatest statement of transparency is to say that your message is exactly your mission. And is exactly how you carry yourself. What you say is exactly what you do. What you say is exactly what you do. And Aisha radiallahu anha says what? كَانَ خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ. His character was Quran. Quranun yamshi fil ard. He was a walking Quran. That's his wife, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Who knows him better than that? Who knows him better than that? Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, right? Strict, you think of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you're going to think of he is the most religious person that's ever walked the face of the earth, obviously, right? When we think of religious people, and you think of that abasa, ubus, always angry, frowning. That's what you think of religious people as, subhanAllah. The shaykh is the guy that you don't want to mess with, that you don't want to make a mistake in Quran in front of him because he might smack you. Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu brings out the secrets of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, Wallahi, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the best of character. And he never even once chastised me. He never even hit me. He never said to me, Why did you do this? Why didn't you do that? SubhanAllah, Anas radiallahu anhu was always around the Prophet ﷺ. His mother, Sulaym radiallahu anha, put him there to serve the Prophet ﷺ. The one incident, he says, is one time the Prophet ﷺ sent me to deliver something. And on the way I got caught up, I saw some other little kids playing, so I started playing with the little kids. And Rasulullah ﷺ just came and he watched. And he said, weren't you supposed to be doing something? SubhanAllah. The more you learn about the Prophet ﷺ behind closed doors, the more you love him, which means that he was a transparent individual sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's why there is a sidq, the opposite of nifaq is truthfulness. There's truthfulness in tongue, truthfulness in speech, and there's truthfulness in action. When you're truthful in speech, that means that what you say is consistent with what you're going to, with reality. Your saying is consistent with reality. And when you are a sadiq in your amal, sadiq in your life, sadiq in what you do, truthful in what you do, that means that what you say is consistent with what you do. When you say that I want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or I'm doing this fi sabilillah, there is absolutely no discrepancy there. You are who you are. Whether you're in the masjid or whether you're outside the masjid. Whether you're in front of people or not in front of people. Now it's very important here to mention that there's a certain level of nifaq, there's a certain level of hypocrisy we need to be sure that we have none of. Okay, in the sense that we should be convinced that I am not this type of hypocrite, which is the type of hypocrite that's in kufr, in disbelief, that actually fools people to get a benefit from faith. Right, like the Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul. They're not actually Muslims, they have no belief in God, it's just to get some sort of benefit from the deen. We're not those types of hypocrites, inshallah. We should all be sure that we are not that type of hypocrite. That we might have shreds of hypocrisy in our lives. And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned something very powerful. Because the greatest way to tell if a person is grateful to Allah? What's the greatest way? What's the greatest indication that a person is grateful to Allah?
Thankful to others.
What is it?
Thankful.
Thankful to who?
To Allah.
No, what's the greatest indication that he is thankful to Allah? That he's grateful to others. The greatest indicator that a person is grateful to Allah is that he's grateful to other people. That the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever does not thank people does not thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Man la yarham, la yurham. Whoever does not show mercy will not have mercy shown to him. The way you interact with people is a direct indication of your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The way you treat people, your khuluq. The woman who used to abuse her neighbors, but she prayed, she fasted, she gave zakat, she did all that good stuff. But she was abusive with her tongue. And the Prophet ﷺ didn't just say she's in hellfire. The Prophet ﷺ said, La khayra fiha. She is devoid of all good. She has no good inside of her. Despite her salah, despite her siyam, despite her zakat. Why? Because the way you treat people is a direct indication of your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what did the Prophet ﷺ say the three greatest signs of hypocrisy are? Ayatul munafiq thalath. There are three signs of a hypocrite. What are they? If he speaks, he lies. And if he makes a promise, he breaks his promise. And if he's given a trust, he doesn't fulfill that trust. That is the greatest sign of a hypocrite. In essence, he's not consistent, he's not transparent. He portrays one face, but he does something totally different. You say something that's not true. You make a promise that you're not going to fulfill, and when you make that promise, the other person has the understanding that you're going to do your best to fulfill it. You're not going to fulfill it. You're given a trust because someone sees you as a good person, as a good individual. I can trust you, but you're not that trustworthy person. In essence, the more you are discovered, the more your demons come out, the more it becomes apparent that you really were a two-faced person, or a three-faced person, or a four-faced. Let's face it, today, subhanAllah, there's a masjid face, there's a work face, there's a home face, there's a school face. SubhanAllah, if Rasulullah said, "Nasharru an-nasi dhul wajhayn," the worst person to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one with two faces, then where does that leave a person who acts so differently wherever he is? SubhanAllah. That's a very serious situation. That's why Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, whenever someone said that, I know this guy, Umar ibn Khattab said, don't say you know someone until you've done one of three things. You've dealt with him in money, Okay? تعاملت معاه بالدرهم والدينار. Because I don't care how nice the person is, or what they appear to be, and the mashallah person that they appear to be. Once you deal with them with money, you'll start seeing that some people are very, very, very shady. What I'm trying to tell you is whenever you go to do business, don't always just give your business to a Muslim because he has a beard and mashallah he has so much nur in his face. The nur in his face might be the reflection of all the money that he's hiding under the counter. Don't be so satisfied. That does not mean that he's a good Muslim and he's going to treat you well. You don't know the man until you've dealt with him with money. You deal with people with money, wallahi, demons come out. Demons come out. Or you lived with him. You live with somebody, then all of a sudden things change. And that's why, subhanAllah, it's very easy to be nice outside of the house and be calm and portray yourself in a certain way. But then you get home and subhanAllah, people see a totally different monster from you. It's like you're yelling at your wife and then as soon as the phone comes, the phone rings, Assalamu alaikum, how are you, mashallah. And then you shut the phone and you go, where were we? Back to square one. The monster comes back out. You don't know someone until you live with them. You don't know someone until you live with them. So be careful. Or Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu said, or you traveled with him. And traveling does not mean that you got in a car and you drove to a different city. Traveling means you spent some quality time with this person. SubhanAllah, you don't know people until you're actually with them. You encounter more of them. So what I'm trying to tell you is SubhanAllah, Imam al-Qayyim rahimahullah said this hadith of the 3 signs of a hypocrite. If you have one of those 3 signs, that is your share of hypocrisy. If you have 2, that's your greater share of hypocrisy. If you have 3, you are a total hypocrite. You are a complete hypocrite. So even if you just have one of those traits, that's your share of hypocrisy. That is your share of nifaq. You've taken a share of nifaq. And the point is, if people knew who you really were, if people saw how you were behind closed doors, if people knew the quality of your salah, if people know the way that you treat your wife, and the way that you treat your children, and the way that you talk when they're not around, and the way that you are when you're not in the masjid, and the way your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really is, would they still give you the same respect? No, probably not. Probably not. Because we change. We change and we're so good at it. SubhanAllah, it's become so much more easier to manipulate people's minds. Especially, SubhanAllah, the young brothers. I want you to think about this story for a moment. Again, looking at youth, I want you to listen very, very carefully to this. Looking at the people on the outside. Wallahi, it doesn't matter how many halaqat you attend. It doesn't matter how much you do over here. If you're not treating your own parents well, it means nothing. You look at the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, Alqama radiallahu anhu was a companion of the Prophet ﷺ. So it's assumed he's great, he's magnificent. But when he's dying and everyone's telling him, say La ilaha illallah, he can't say La ilaha illallah. He cannot say La ilaha illallah. He's a companion of the Prophet ﷺ. He used to attend lectures with the Prophet ﷺ. What more? He said La ilaha illallah on the hands of Muhammad ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ gave him shahada, and at the time of his death, he can't say La ilaha illallah. And the Prophet ﷺ said, go to his mother. Let's go to his mother. The Prophet ﷺ asks her, how is your relationship with Al-Mustafa? And she was not pleased with him. SubhanAllah, she wasn't pleased with him. She was upset with him. Because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibited him from saying La ilaha illallah at the time of his death. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam pleaded with her, I'm paraphrasing, until she said that she forgave him. And when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam went back to Alqamah, he was repeating La ilaha illallah until his death. But let's face it, many of us won't have that opportunity for the Prophet ﷺ, or none of us will have the opportunity for the Prophet ﷺ to talk to our parents on our behalf over here and say, look, forgive your son. No, you better be consistent. The people that are closest to you know you most, and Allah knows you more than they do. So you start off with your inner circle as an indicator of hypocrisy. You start off with the people that know you best, your friends that are around you most. And you ask yourself, and you ask them, am I failing? What do you think? Give me advice. Because it starts off with that inner circle. They know you more than anyone else, or else the demons will eventually come out. And Imam Abi Qutaybah, rahimahullah, he said that there was an imam, a scholar who was so righteous in the eyes of the people, فِيمَا يَظْهَرُ لِلنَّاسِ, as it appeared to people, that when he died, the people were crying, rivers at his janazah. And then they found that his manbar became infested with rats. So I said, well, what's going on here? And subhanAllah, they asked his wife, and his wife was making dua against him the entire time. And his wife was making dua for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take him because he used to abuse his wife. All of that goes to waste. Because the people around you, they know you best. And then after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows you better than the people around you. Because let's face it, we even put on a face for the people around us too. We put on a face for our family members also, many times. Maybe not to the extent that we do outside, but we do put on faces everywhere. And in essence, coming to a consistency with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where your actions and your words and your being, it's all consistent. There's sidq, there's a truthfulness in it, is something that you have to strive hard for. And the first way is to fear it. The second way is to make sure. Is to make sure that what people don't know of me is better than what people know of me. How many of us can actually say that? And Imam Al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he said, first and foremost, the indicator, he said, your tongue is like a spoon into the food, your heart. It's like a spoonful of the heart. If you think about a meal, you're going to get a taste of the food from a spoonful. So Imam Al-Qayyim rahimahullah said, your tongue is a spoonful of your heart. So it's a good indicator of the state of your heart. That's number one, your tongue. So your actions, the way you treat people. But the other thing, just to ask yourself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, He says there's going to be two types of people. There's going to be the person that's going to be walking around after receiving his book in his right hand and who's going to be saying, Ha umuqra'u kitabiyah. The person who didn't brag in this dunya, he's going to be bragging in akhirah. He's going to say, look at my book. Look at my salah. Look at my secret sadaqah. Look at this moment that I did this and I made tasbih and I made dhikr. Here it is. Everybody come read my book. Ha umuqra'u kitabiyah. I knew this day was coming. I didn't show it off to you in dunya because I wanted the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with it. But now, go ahead and read my book. And the one who receives this book in his left hand would say, Ya laytani lam uta kitabiyah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says two things. فَأَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِشِمَالِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, مِنْ وَرَاءَ ظَهْرِ, in his left hand and behind his back. And the scholars explain this, that whenever the person realizes that he's about to get his book of deeds, just like he was a liar and a hypocrite in dunya, he's going to put his hand behind his back. So he can't receive it there. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow the book to hit him in the back and will chain him that way. And as he walks around in shame, he would say, Ya laytani lam uta kitabiyah. I wish I never got a book. Lam adri ma hisabiya. And I never knew what my state was. Ya laytaha kanat al-qadiyah. I just wish I was destroyed. I wish I didn't exist. And everyone is reading and saying, oh, subhanallah, we used to think he was a sheikh. We used to think this was a person who comes to the masjid. We used to think this was a person who gives sadaqah. He was the most generous at fundraisers. That kid, he was the one telling everybody else to go to the halaqas. We thought he was this, we thought she was that. But you're being exposed, full exposure on the day of judgment. We ask Allah to protect us. But I have a question for you, and I'll end on this note. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed us to receive our books right now at this moment, would you be willing to show that book to anybody? It's as simple as that. I know I wouldn't. I know I wouldn't. Would you be willing to take that book around and say, this is what I do, this is my life? This is who you didn't know I was? And the answer is no. Usually it's no. And that's why the Sahaba feared it most. They feared if their salah was a little bit longer in jama'ah than it was at home. They feared if they were just a little bit better. Handala radiallahu anhu. This guy wasn't beating on his wife. He wasn't disobedient to his parents. He wasn't a crook in his business. He wasn't doing speedy salawat when the Prophet ﷺ wasn't watching. He was so convinced he was a hypocrite because he said, I'm not as religious when I'm not with the Prophet ﷺ. He's still the same person. He's still consistent. But he says, when I'm with the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, when we're with you, we don't even think about dunya. All we're thinking about is akhirah. Then we go home and the family and the kids. What was he worried about? He wasn't worried about the demons coming out of the closet. Well, he thought they were demons, but his demons would be our hasanat. The amount of salah he did at home would be our hasanat. The amount of dhikr he did at home would be our greatest day of Ramadan. But they were scared. They were scared. Because we have to worry about that consistency. If someone was watching me tonight and watching you tonight, would they be impressed or would they be ashamed, humiliated? And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said that the worst person on the Day of Judgment, the worst person in hellfire is going to be a person. By the way, don't think this is just a scholar or an imam. This is each and every single one of us masjid goers that tells other people how to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Each and every single one of you youth who tells the other guys, hey, come to the halaqah. Rasulullah ﷺ says that that person is walking around the fire of hell holding his intestines. And the people are saying to him, you used to tell us, come to the masjid. You used to tell us to fear Allah. What happened to you? I was telling you things that I wasn't doing myself. What I was saying to you was not who I really was. It's a very scary thing. The point of this though is not to make us despair. I know it feels that way. But I just want to give you a few tips, inshallah ta'ala. I know I probably have like 3 minutes left. Just quickly, inshallah ta'ala, dear brothers and sisters. The more you pray in the masjid is the more you should pray at home. The more you treat people good outside is the more you should treat people good inside of your house. The more that you appear to be generous on the outside is the more you should be generous on the inside. Try to be consistent. Start off with your tongue. Yes, consistency in tongue, because a liar is a munafiq. A person who breaks his promise, even he says, I promise I'll be there in 10 minutes. That's a promise. You just gave a promise. Someone gives you an amana and you don't deliver it until 2 years later. That's a trust that you broke. Those are signs of hypocrisy. Try to rise up to the expectations of you and then beat those expectations. Otherwise, we're just like those hypocrites in Medina who would only come to the masjid for Dhuhr, Asr and Maghrib. Why? Because Fajr and Isha. It's not because Fajr was hard to wake up because it was sleep time. Because during Fajr and Isha it was pitch black. We didn't have these chandeliers. Who's going to see me anyway? No one's going to know I wasn't at the masjid. Beat the expectations that people have of you. Do things that people don't know about. Pray 2 rak'ahs without anyone knowing. Give a little bit of sadaqah without even telling your wife. Because just as the people in your house know you better than the people outside of your house, the one who created you and is always with you knows you better than the people that are with you most of the time. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us sincerity and sidq, al-ikhlas wa sidq and truthfulness. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us away from hypocrisy, to keep us away from all forms of riyā, showing off, to keep us away from al-ujb and al-ghurur, self-deceit and conceit. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who on the Day of Judgment will be exposed for their good deeds and not for their sins. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us for our shortcomings, to forgive us for our shortcomings, and to allow us to rise above them before the time of death. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to leave this world saying La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah, and to be raised up saying La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. Jazakumullahu khairan. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم.
Alright, so inshallah ta'ala, we'll take some questions, inshallah, with the little time that we have. Tafadhal, inshallah ta'ala. If anyone has any questions. Yeah.
How tall are you exactly?
How tall am I exactly? 6'4", 375 or something like that. I round up to 6'5". Yeah, sisters, if you have any questions, you can write on a piece of paper, inshallah, and deliver it, inshallah. Any brothers have any questions? Yes.
I just wanted to review what you said before. What were the three signs?
Okay, so the 3 signs of the hypocrite: if he speaks, he lies; if he makes a promise, he breaks it; and if he's given a trust, he doesn't fulfill his trust. Got it? Yeah.
You mentioned about I think you mentioned about someone in hellfire who will be walking around with his intestines, and that was someone who would invite others and remind others. So, how, like, that's my question is, how are we supposed to avoid doing that? Is the solution stepping away from inviting others, or?
Right, so that's a very good question. One thing that you notice with the Sahaba, they didn't allow their fear of hypocrisy to render them inactive. The action continues and you keep fighting with the intention. As long as you're not explicitly doing the action with a bad purpose, with a bad intention, then you should continue doing, because subhanAllah, like the scholars say, the greater riyah, the greater showing off, is leaving the action out of fear of hypocrisy. Because then what are you saying to people? Oh, I'm so good, you know, I'm trying to fight hypocrisy. That's what shaitan wants you to do. He wants you to stop doing the action. He wants you to stop coming to the masjid. He wants you to stop doing the good things because he wants you to be inactive at the end of the day. He'll attack you from any perspective. So the intention is something that changes all the time, and that's why you have to consistently renew the intention and fight with it. But to leave the action is a greater sin. So don't leave the action. Imam Al-Ghazali rahimahullah, I mean, he said, طَلَبْنَا الْعِلْمِ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ فَأَبَى الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا أَن يَكُونَ لِلَّهِ. That when we started seeking knowledge in the beginning, he's talking about himself. We were seeking it for something other than Allah, but knowledge refused to be given except for Allah. So I had to keep fighting with myself and keep working. I mean, until he found himself doing it fi sabilillah. So you keep on, and then you try to reform your intention in the meantime. Other questions? Yeah.
So I have a question, like sometimes if I'm like amongst like religious people, or outwardly who seem to be religious, and like if they do something good to me or help me, so I would do like Jazakallah khair. But if I'm with like people who are not so religious, and then if they do good to me, I just say thanks, because if I say Jazakallah, they'll give that weird look, like, okay, what? So would that be like having 2 faces, or?
Well, look, it's good to make in a setting, in an environment. The question was, if I'm with religious people, I say Jazakallah khair. If I'm with not so religious people, I just say thank you, because I'm afraid it'll just be kind of awkward. It's good to slowly and gradually introduce religion into an environment that considers it awkward. Even if it's just you start saying Assalamu alaikum to your friend instead of what's up. Slowly ease it in. As long as your intention is not to hide, then gradually ease it in, inshallah. I mean, I'll be honest, there's some people that even if I say Jazakallah khair to them, they'll just kind of like, but you ease it, you make it gradual. I had a friend that's, anytime I said salam to him, he never answered. Right? But eventually, alhamdulillah, he started answering. Now, he's Muslim, but he just wasn't used to it. Yeah. Yes.
One of the qualities of the believer is وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. And since there are a lot of youth over here, I'd like you to relate to youth this quality of believer, because they spend too much time in Facebook and other things which are not productive.
Right, and I think the question, or he's talking about وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ, those who stop idle talk and idle speech. There is a balance there. Now, the youth, definitely one of the things that we have today is that people are obsessed with everybody else's life, and you've got Facebook and reality TV and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, it's in essence, you're not able to be productive, you're not able to comprehend anything, because you're consistently just involved in nonsense. Leisure is healthy. Leisure is healthy. Abu Darda radiallahu anhu, he said that we do things that we used to do, and Abu Darda is the greatest zahid, ascetic. He said we do things that are neither mustahab nor are they haram. They're not necessarily rewardable acts of worship, nor are they haram, and that makes me stronger in my ibadah. So finding a good, healthy amount of leisure is good, but just don't waste your time on unproductive things. There's no doubt about it, because that leads to so many different sins. Leads to more your gaze going the wrong way. That leads to more talking to someone you shouldn't be talking to, or getting exposed to things you shouldn't be exposed to, and so on and so forth. I know this is irrelevant, and by the way, don't laugh at this question, okay? Because I know because when we laugh at questions, we come off as insensitive, and that's one of the problems, one of the reasons why sometimes the youth are afraid of asking questions. Is smoking weed haram by using a pipe, and why? The answer to that, I said don't laugh, come on guys. The answer to that question, to understand properly, the word in the Arabic language, khamr, does not mean alcohol. Okay, khamr is what's prohibited, right? It does not mean alcohol. Khamr means anything that serves the purpose of intoxicating. Any intoxicant in Islam qualifies as khamr. Okay? Weed is an intoxicating ingredient, and it hurts the aql, which is the intellect. It can make you, and I know that some people would say, no, it's actually productive, things of that sort. Yeah, drinking a little bit of wine is actually good for you too, but most people are not going to be able to stop at drinking a little bit of wine. Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made all of these things haram completely. So even if you smoke weed by a pipe, it's haram. Even if you try to make an argument that it's not intoxicating, eventually if you're smoking weed with a pipe, you're going to start smoking weed without a pipe. And people who start smoking weed end up doing harder drugs. It's just the process of shaitan, the way he lures you in. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. So even if you start with a small drug, by the way, that's not very hard. I know tons of friends that started off with marijuana and ended up on cocaine and ecstasy and things of that sort. I mean, it's just a natural process, because eventually you get used to the drug and you're not getting the same high out of it anymore. So it is haram, absolutely. And it is a very severe punishment on the Day of Judgment, because it still falls in the category of khamr. My parents are unhappy that I converted to Islam. What can I say to convince them that my heart is committed to this religion? First and foremost, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and make you firm, inshallah. Everyone say Ameen. It's a very, very hard thing to do. And let me just tell you this much. Just keep on letting them see the beauty of Islam in your life, how it's changed your character. It's a slow, gradual process. It doesn't work as fast as saying, just mom, say La ilaha illallah and become Muslim. But if they see that you're starting to kiss their hands and starting to do extra things for them, you're becoming just an overall much better person, that might change their minds. My best friend in middle school, actually since elementary school, since first grade, his name was Joshua. And he converted to Islam in 8th grade. When he converted to Islam, everyone in his family was extremely unhappy, including his mom. He grew up in a single parent household, so he grew up just with his mom. And somehow they were all unhappy. Today, his mother is Muslim, his grandmother is Muslim, one of his aunts is Muslim, one of his uncles is Muslim, and his uncle's kids are Muslim. Alhamdulillah. So it takes time. They will come around, inshallah ta'ala, if you show them the beautiful character. Now, also, just keep on making dua. Keep on making dua. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu was coming to the Prophet ﷺ, and he was so sad that his mother was not Muslim. And she was insulting the Prophet ﷺ actually. Rasulullah ﷺ made dua for her, and Abu Hurairah went home and he found her as Muslim. So inshallah ta'ala, all of us, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya muqallib al-qulub, the one who changes hearts, to change her heart and your father's heart, your parents' hearts to Islam, and to bring them close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to make them a source of bringing you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everyone say Ameen.
Ameen.
Alhamdulillah. So inshallah, the dua, just keep on making dua and showing them the beauty of Islam. How do I seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Just very quickly. Number one, there's 3 conditions of tawbah, and a 4th, which is a conditional condition. Number 1 is to feel bad for what you've done, remorse. But remorse is not enough. To act on that remorse, to allow that remorse to bring you close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to allow that remorse to make you productive. So remorse that is despair is not good. Because shaitan, before you commit a sin, tells you how merciful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is and tells you how great you are. After you commit the sin, shaitan tells you how angry Allah is and how terrible you are. He totally switches up his da'wah. So don't despair, but feel bad about what you've done. And then after that, you make istighfar, you actually seek forgiveness, you express that, that seeking of forgiveness, you make du'as for forgiveness, you pray 2 rak'ahs even, seeking forgiveness, and then you make a commitment not to return back to the sin. And if your commitment's sincere and you end up returning to it anyway and you go through the same process again, Rasulullah said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not be tired or become fatigued, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not stop answering your tawbah until you get sick of asking Him for it. As long as you're sincere and you're trying, inshallah. How do we Islamically deal with a relative who is mean to you but kind to everyone else? Example, doesn't answer even your salam. Don't allow their bad manners to make you have bad manners. Teach them good manners. Okay, so you respond, idfa' billati hiya ahsan. Respond to their evil with good. Make sure that you always extend the salam even if they never say it. I had a relative of mine, subhanAllah, there were 2 relatives that were at war over land, and he used to say salamu alaikum to his cousin every single day for like 20 years. And then after like 20 years, his cousin said wa alaikum assalam, and he went, what? He said, wa alaikum assalam. Keep on saying salam, don't be arrogant, don't backbite them. Just make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reconcile the heart towards you, and seek consolation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Seek comfort from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If someone hurts you in this life, seek the compensation from Allah. Don't be too caught up on it. You won't die, inshallah. Okay, it's a comment. Our young generation is living two-faced life, one for school, one for home. I think parents should make time, or should make their children comfortable as long as they are following their deen, not their culture, so they are not two-faced. Absolutely. Again, it's, subhanAllah, let me tell you something, brothers. If your kids are not talking to you about their problems, it's not because they don't have problems. It's because you haven't made them comfortable with talking to you about their problems. Okay, it's just the fact of life. So unfortunately, we cling to, and this is in general, we cling to the superficial aspects of deen, or we cling to the rituals of deen, and we ignore the substance of it sometimes. And again, our children inherit that. It's an environment. It's just a formality, but it's nothing real. What if a person is acting different somewhere other than home, but not acting bad? I don't really know what that means, to be honest with you. If it means that you're a better person when you're in the masjid, but you're good at home, then that's good, alhamdulillah. You're naturally supposed to be better sometimes, but what I'm saying, you naturally excel in certain environments, but I don't really know what that means, to be honest with you. It's not good to have two faces regardless. I mean, to just completely change your identity, it's just not good. Any other questions? Yeah.
If you do something and you know that's wrong, but someone asks you what to do in that certain situation, how should you respond?
Okay, say that again.
If you do something and you know what you're doing is wrong.
If you do something and you know what you're doing is wrong,
and someone else asks you what to do, should you?
So someone else who's doing the same thing asks you what to do?
I'll explain it. Like, if you're doing something that's wrong and someone asks you what's the correct thing to do in a certain situation, but you yourself are doing the wrong thing, how do you tell? Like, he wants to know the right answer.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. So if you're doing something wrong and someone else is doing the same wrong and they're asking you what to do in that situation, you should give them an advice, but not say you, say we. Okay? We need to change this about ourselves, we need to do this, we need to do that, without exposing yourself, but just don't make it one directional. Anyone else? Questions? Yes?
Well, if you're a convert and you chose like an extra Islamic name, would it be bad, for example, in front of non-Muslims,
choose to call yourself by like the original name, the official name, and for example in the masjid, people know you as like the Muslim name that you gave yourself?
Well, okay. Here's what I'm gonna say, and I know what I have to say on this topic is a lot of people take it the wrong way. I don't believe that a person should change their name when they come to Islam unless there's something objectionable about the name. Period. Right, I know. Seemed like a cool idea at the time, right? That's fine. As long as you're not hiding, as long as you don't feel awkward in front of people, that's the point. You know, if that's a manifestation of just you want to make it easier for people, that's your name anyway. But in the masjid, you know, people call you something else, that's fine, inshallah. I mean, you're not doing that as an action of hypocrisy. But generally speaking, I don't believe non-Muslims should change their name, I mean, whenever they convert to Islam, because that makes Islam foreign to other people. It has more effect in da'wah when a person does this, when there is a person who reverted to Islam that's speaking to an audience and his name is, we got one of my favorite people in Louisiana, Ed Ott. That's more effective than saying my name is Muhammad, because Ed is like me. You understand? So the Sahaba would not change their names, and Rasulullah ﷺ would not change their names unless there was something objectionable about the name. But congratulations. Okay, there's a question here about shaking hands with the opposite gender. And if not, is it okay to shake hands with the opposite gender? And if not, how can we deal with such a situation to avoid handshaking? Here's what you do. I'm going to give you a few tips. Or hi, how are you? Keep your hands full. Alright? Keep your hands full. Whenever I go to the bank, if we go to the bank, I'll take my wife with me always and we'll have the baby. And if it's a woman, then I'll hold the baby. If we see a woman walking around, and if it's a man, she'll hold the baby. Either way, what I'm saying is, I only do that by the way, and I'm saying it's okay to do that type of stuff. But what I'm saying is, I say use it as an opportunity to educate, and people will not be offended. I'm telling you, people won't be offended. There will be every once in a while someone who will be, but for the most part, you can actually turn that into a very valuable opportunity of da'wah. You can, what I always say? I say, I'm sorry, it's considered disrespectful to women in Islam for me to shake their hands. What does that mean? That just sets off like a It's the woman is honorable in Islam. What does that mean? Say, in Eastern Europe, actually in medieval Europe, a woman would never shake hands with a man. Because if she had status. If she didn't have status, she would shake hands with everybody. Until today, Queen Elizabeth does not shake hands with men. It's considered offensive for Queen Elizabeth. No one can try to shake hands with Queen Elizabeth. So I say in our deen, every woman is a queen. That's good da'wah, right? Just say, in our religion, every woman's a queen. Sorry. You're gonna melt them. But then don't start flirting. Nice. The point is, try to approach the person, show confidence in what you're saying, use it as an opportunity to strike up a conversation, inshallah. I mean, it works. It works if you use it as an opportunity to strike up a conversation. Do we have time for one more question? I don't know what. Yeah.
Yes. So, like in my masjid, my area, they serve food after every Monday and Thursday. So, I make an effort to do other days too, but Monday and Thursday, people, make extra effort to have the time of food. So, would that be like hypocrisy?
You are brutally honest, man. I love it. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. That's a good sign. So the question is, on Monday and Thursday they serve food, and you make a little bit of an extra effort to go to the masjid and they're serving food. You are just like 99% of the rest of Muslims. Because if you want to bring Muslims to an activity, you serve biryani. It's as simple as that. And even if you serve pizza. What I would say is that, look, there's obviously the social element of the masjid. There's a lot of other things. Alhamdulillah, we like to see the people that we love. It's a relief, it's a refresher every day. Alhamdulillah, those are the benefits. But just make sure your intention for going to the salat is the salat. But you go to Isha every night, especially if you've been at work all day and you've been exhausted. It's a nice chance to see everybody. There's no doubt about it. It's a good gathering. But make sure that's not the driving force to the masjid. Okay. Jazakallah khair. Anybody else? Yes.
Fourth characteristic of not this type of person when he argues or fights, he does is very violent. How is that?
I know what you're talking about.
What is the question?
The fourth characteristic. There's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ mentions the fourth characteristic.
I think it says something like when he's confronted, he quarrels. I mean, that was
It's basically he's argumentative. He's rough. He's rude whenever he's approached. Whenever he's. I'm just thinking of the Arabic terminology, to be honest with you. But it's argumentative. It's quarreling. It's foul. Someone who's foul. Someone who's rough.
That's what say.
Right. Anybody else? Yeah.
So a lot of teens and even like college students, in their especially college students, I guess they go through a spiritual phase, or they go through school and they're with friends, and they're when they're at home they're different, like you said, but sometimes this hypocrisy or two-facedness, it troubles them, and they feel like they're not at ease with themselves. And so one of my friends, he talked to me about this, and I wasn't sure what to say. I just told him to be true to yourself, but like, can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, unfortunately, so the question is, sometimes people are troubled with themselves, especially college students, they go through a little bit of a phase. I'll end with this answer, inshallah, because I think it's a very important answer. Muslims, we tend to think backwards. Shaitan makes us think backwards. So if I'm wearing hijab, but I don't feel like I am the person that people think I am because I'm wearing hijab, or I'm not even praying my prayers on time, I'm going to take off my hijab. Not start praying more often or praying the right way and keep my hijab on. The brothers will say, I can't go to Hajj because my money is haram. Not, I'm going to make my money halal so I can go to Hajj. Or I can't fast in Ramadan because I don't pray. Not, I'm going to start praying so that my fasting can be accepted. Shaitan always makes us backtrack. So what I would say is you tell that person to fight with their intention, to fight with that hypocrisy, and make sure they're getting higher, they're ascending. Because if they're descending, then they face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with two crimes, hypocrisy and inaction. Right, so it's better to fight the hypocrisy, because the Sahaba fought the hypocrisy. They felt hypocritical, they felt like they weren't being true to themselves. So if they felt that way, that means you should never not feel that way. But that should drive you to do more good on a personal level. Jazakumullah khair, I think that's the end.